Hello, hello, and welcome to the Shit You Wished You Would Have Learned in Grad School podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Agee, licensed clinical professional counselor. And today I have with me Yunetta Spring Smith. She is a licensed professional counselor, all around amazing therapreneur, which is a therapist and entrepreneur combined. She is the CEO and founder of Springforth Counseling, Groundbreakers Coaching and Consulting, and the brand new Groundbreakers BIPOC EMDR directory. Yunetta is licensed in Tennessee, Kentucky, and Indiana. She is a published author. She is also on Talk It Out Tuesday with Ricky Smiley morning show every week. And she even has her own podcast called Deeper Than the Diet. So I am very happy to have you here today, Yunetta. Welcome.
I am happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Jennifer. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So Yunetta and I know each other personally, and we are both entrepreneurial therapists, and that's where we really connect at. And I wanted to invite her on the podcast today to talk about how to break out of the box that we are all taught is supposed to be what a therapist looks like, because that has been limiting for a lot of entrepreneurs, us included, and we've had to do our own work to break out of that box. So Yunetta, welcome, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, let's talk about it. So I'm just loving this topic. I'm loving the shit you wish you learned in grad school, because I think we all, me speaking for myself, had to kind of figure it out as we go, and still in some ways, having to figure things out business wise as we go. So I love that we're talking about breaking out of the box, because I don't like boxes. I'm very creative and I like to be free flowing and kind of go with the flow. And anything that feels like it's limiting, I feel like I'm allergic to it.
And you and I are creative in different ways. And
Yeah.
I think it's brilliant that you can be creative, but in very different ways. Yunetta is classically creative. If you look at her TikToks, if you look at her social media, even the photos she takes for her online presence, phenomenal, very creative. I am not nearly that creative, but I am creative in the strategic business thinking way. I can zoom out, look down, and move pieces of a puzzle around to create strategy that works. So it's different forms of creativity, but it's been a lot of fun to watch your process.
Yes, it's fun to watch your process, and the areas where I kind of struggle and have an issue with wrapping my mind around, your mind flows so well. So I just was thinking about when we were in Florida, we have a mastermind group, and we were in Florida, like working on a project, and like on my side of the couch, it was chaos. I had books everywhere, sweet tarts, water, like I just had stuff everywhere, and you were just sitting very organized and typing it together. And I was like, this is what my brain looks like. This and this. But when we were able to kind of talk and bounce ideas off of each other, it just flowed so well. So I always get that image in my head, and I have to laugh when I think about it.
I think about that image too. And I think that kind of goes into what we're talking about today in part, which is, I think the way scarcity mindset affects not only the way we approach our businesses, but the way we approach other therapists. We can both win. We can both support each other and be strong in different ways and see one another succeed. There's more than enough need that goes around, but that scarcity mentality that gets built into us, especially those who are going into private practice, is something that is hard to break out of.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think scarcity is based in fear. You know what I mean? Like that fear that there's not enough, or fear that it has to be, you have to be a certain way to be successful. So when I look at breaking out of the box, a lot of that, the reasons why it's difficult is because the fear, right? I think a lot of how we learn in school, I know for me personally, was very fear-based, very much so. You don't want to do this, don't do that, don't break your client, don't re-traumatize them, don't, follow all of these guidelines. And guidelines are important, boundaries are important. We need them, right, to function.
Absolutely.
But when that is stressed so much, and me being an EMDR therapist and really looking at how the brain operates and what happens when you are afraid, like what part of your brain you operate in, when you're in that fear-based mindset, it really does stifle and suffocate, your ability to be authentic and be creative, because you're so scared you're gonna mess something up.
You are absolutely right. And I'm a clinical supervisor as well. And one of the things I often have to talk to my supervisees about is that the boundaries are there for a reason, but it's actually, there's a lot of space within that to be able to operate. And people are so afraid that I'm going to get reported to the state if I do something, or I'm going to
Right.
cross some sort of line I didn't know existed, that they stay so far away from any boundary at all that, it stifles them from just being who they are authentically in the room with their clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Because when you think about it, when you're, we often say, I know a lot of people have probably heard the quote of when you are depressed, more so your mind is like in the past. And when you're anxious, your mind is in the future. And, being content is when you're very present in the here and now. Right. And if
Mhm.
you're thinking about, am I going to mess up, or is this am I breaking a rule, or, a law or something like that, or breaking the law, breaking the therapy laws. If you're thinking that way, where's your mind at? Right?
Yeah,
It's
you're
not
in
in the
fear-based.
moment, right? You're fear-based, your mind is thinking more so in the future. So you're not even really able to connect with your client or in the room with your client at that time.
Mhm.
So a lot of that I had to learn how to um, be myself and know that that is more than enough to be able to help my clients heal and connect and grow and
Mhm.
evolve. Um, and I think being a Black female therapist, that was difficult somewhat because I didn't have many examples of what that looked like what this being a therapist looks like for a Black woman. What does that look like? Because a lot of my professors were either white males or, some white women. But I really didn't have a template,
Yeah.
or something to connect with, to build off of. So a lot of my discovery kind of happened from the ground up.
Mhm. Well, and and there's some others that are really emerging therapists who are groundbreakers too
Hmm.
for the BIPOC community. And I am absolutely loving watching the way that that's starting to grow and thrive. And there's a unique space now carved out where younger therapists can look up and say, I see someone who's doing what I'd like to do, and they're successful at it,
Hmm.
and they're well respected, and they can be an author, and they can be all of these things. I think is brilliant,
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. And that's, a part of how I want to give back. Um, as far as Groundbreakers, like being in a space where you don't have to be the only one.
Mhm.
Because in a lot of clinical settings, a lot of trainings, a lot of educational settings, I was one of the only, people or in of color, in those settings. And it really takes extra effort to decide, do I ask this question? How is this going to be perceived? Or will they understand what I mean? Or can they provide an answer that's going to fit me as a person or the demographic of individuals that I work with? Um, is it going to be taken out of context? There's just a lot of stuff that has to happen mentally to be able to open up in that space. And when that barrier isn't there, like creativity can be present, learning can happen, connection, can happen in those spaces where, you're not the only one. So I'm really enjoying seeing how Groundbreakers is developing and seeing clinicians who are, trained in EMDR or learning more about EMDR become more confident and being able to say, hey, this isn't working, you know?
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, let's talk about why, So yeah, that's pretty cool.
What do you think therapists can do to start to break out of the box? what are some tangible steps you think we can take?
Mhm. I think the awareness, is kind of like the knowing that you are in the box, I think is really important. Sometimes we don't recognize that, that first part that we are limiting ourselves or we feel afraid. Um, the next is really to spend time with yourself, spend time with community. Sometimes one of our other friends, Montoya, said this weekend, she said something that was so powerful. And she said, if you don't have, she was talking with someone else, but she said, if you don't have the confidence now, you can borrow some of mine. And I was like, oh, that's so sweet, but there's so much power in community and being able to like build your confidence around being able to show up, as your most authentic self. And then I think it's important to be able to work through those wounds and those things that, like, who told you you had to be in a box?
Yeah.
Right. So really being able to get to the core of why you're in the box, right?
Mhm.
Is it because you feel like you aren't good enough? Right? Is it because you feel like you can't, like or you're afraid of what's going to happen when you like really get into the core of why you feel like are limited. I think that's
I
a good
love that.
start.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I love that. And I really appreciate you highlighting the connection with other therapists, because if there's one piece of advice I could give to younger therapists, it's to surround yourself with other therapists who do not have the mindset that you're all in competition with one another, that
Mhm.
really are there to support and help each other thrive and grow, that will give you honest, constructive feedback when you need it. Because being around another group of therapists who have that same growth mindset, who have that mindset of we can all succeed. There's not a limited amount of ways that we can serve or be successful or build wealth. I mean, ooh, the
Mhm.
dirty word, money and therapy, but like surround yourself with people that have a same mindset in terms of growth, and maybe limit your amount of time with people who are trying to keep you more in that scarcity mindset. That will not
Absolutely.
serve you well.
Yeah, absolutely. I said there is room. There's enough people hungry for everybody to eat, right? There
Mhm.
is enough people who need services for everybody to serve. And I understand that everyone has a lane, right? Some lanes are more congested than others,
Mhm.
right? So it may be more difficult for some people to kind of move through that lane, right? And some people may be in the fast lane and they can just breeze through because of whatever experiences they had, whether it be different privileges, different social economic status, different areas that they live in. But we all have our own individual lane. Like there's this, I strongly believe that there is a set of people who need you
Yeah.
specifically, right? So it doesn't matter what anybody else is doing. There are just people who are going to gravitate to me because I'm me. And
Mhm.
I'm, like I have an assignment to help them and they're called to work with me. And I think when we look at things from that perspective, then we can just really be focused on what it is we're here to do, you
Yeah.
know, and not get caught up on what someone else is doing or feel like we need to dim someone else's light so that we can shine. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I try to, stay in that mindset. And when I have moments when I'm not, I know that it's that I have that something has activated an area in me that still needs to heal,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
that's the way I look at it when I'm encountering or dealing with someone else. I'm like, wow, that's the area that they still need to heal. And that lets me kind of give them compassion and not, you know, call them shit we sometimes we call them that anyway, but you know what I mean. It just lets me, because sometimes that's just necessary to get it out and call it what it is, but it gives me that bit of compassion, that's necessary so that their energy doesn't contaminate me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Their energy doesn't contaminate me. And that is so poignant, because what we take in, and the more we're learning about energy research and things like that, the more we take in from people around us, we have to be mindful and protective of what it is that we're bringing in. And professionally, when we're sitting with clients, we don't always have control over who's with us and what energy is brought into the room. But professionally, we can make some of those choices. And
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to be afraid and do things anyway. I know as entrepreneurs, breaking out of the box, breaking out of, just sitting on our hiney and making money, all day long. It is scary. It is very, very scary and very, very vulnerable. And it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to have that vulnerability in those scary moments, and reach out and get some reassurance.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, we've created businesses for us where we have more autonomy and control over how we move and who we interact with. But I think a lot about when I did agency work
Mm-hmm.
and how that was completely draining, because trying to keep that abundant mindset and there's room for everybody and I just want to see people heal and let me just share and share and share, and then like getting burned and stuff, burned and burned out in that
Mm-hmm.
environment. It makes me think about those folks who may not have necessarily the control, that we have as business owners to
Mm-hmm.
some degree. And I always love I'm big on analogies. That's
Yes.
how my brain works. So I love the analogy that it's not the water around the ship that causes the ship to sink. It's the water that you let get inside of the ship,
Mm-hmm.
that causes it to sink. So, just as an encouragement to those folks, just being mindful to not allow, if you can, as much as you can. That's why it's good to have community when you're in environments that you don't necessarily have control over, just
Yeah.
making sure that it doesn't seep into like who you are as a person, or you start to subscribe to some of those the mindset or some of those practices because you're in an environment that is draining, or
Yeah.
that is, that's operating from a scarcity perspective.
And some of the environments and agency, it's almost a badge of honor how much you work, or how much
Mm-hmm.
you're sacrificing yourself. And one of the areas that I think a lot of therapists have limiting beliefs around is money.
Mm-hmm.
And this idea that because we are helpers and healers in the world, that somehow means that if we are abundant financially, that somehow we're frauds, we're phonies, we're not doing what we need to do for a society or the community or something like that. And there's this mindset that's seeped in somewhere and somehow
Mm-hmm.
that has really been toxic to therapists in creating a ton of burnout and stress. Lots of people leave the field because they don't feel like they can make a good living. Where the
Mm-hmm.
heck did that come from?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I think it's, some of it is systemic, some of it is cultural, to where helpers don't receive. Like if
Mm-hmm.
I help, I'm giving, and
Yeah.
there's no reciprocity, and the only thing that I can receive as a helper is just the goodness that the feeling of goodness that to help, right? But there's nothing tangible that I can get from helping. So I think dismantling um, that ideology around what a helper is, or the heart of a helper,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because a lot of that is ingrained in us, that so many things, it's better to give than to receive, those
Yeah.
type of things that make it very difficult to accept help if you're a helper.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I always say is, if we have a problem with receiving or accepting help as a helper, then we really have to check ourselves in terms of what is it that you believe about yourself, and what is it that you believe about the people that you're helping,
Ooh, that's
right?
good. Yeah.
Because if you're not, like, if you're above receiving support and help, then what do you think about the people that you're helping? Do you think they're
Mm,
beneath you,
hmm.
right?
That's a good
So I think
perspective.
that's a good way to kind of check ourselves when we have an issue with reciprocity or with receiving what we're giving. Um, like, who told us that that was an issue, and where does that come from, and really unpacking the idea around even how we view people who have money, you
Hmm.
know. And a lot of, in a lot of Black and brown cultures, people who have money um, have exploited others, right? The
Hmm.
people who have money are not good people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we don't want to be associated with that, or don't want to be viewed as such. So
Hmm.
we push it away so that we don't have that, mindset. But I feel like money is just a magnifier. It's just going to highlight more of what's already in you. So if you are a good, kind-hearted, caring, loving person, then money is going to cause you to be more kind-hearted, more caring, more good, more loving, more giving.
Hmm.
And if you are stingy and selfish and, an entitled person, or whatever the case may be, if we're using labels, then the money is just going to magnify that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the areas that I think therapists would do well to either do some of their own counseling work,
Mm-hmm.
or hire a coach to work around this area, because it is one of the biggest places I see people limit themselves
Mm-hmm.
when they're looking to grow or expand, or even conceptualize what it looks like to be a successful therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would encourage you, if as we're talking, this is something that's coming up for you, and maybe you resonate with some of the ideas that therapists, are always supposed to just settle, or,
Mm-hmm.
barely make ends meet, or it's difficult to receive some of those themes. Do your work around it. You'll be really glad that you do.
Yeah, yeah, we have to. I mean, I don't think that's stressed enough in grad school. If you're talking about shit you wish you would have learned. I know we had to take as a part of the requirement, we had to go to therapy, but it was just like, just go to see what it's like and get that experience. But it wasn't stressed that this should be like a practice for you, because in
Mhm.
most cases, most of us got into this field because of some kind of wound. I'm just gonna
Sure.
say it, oh, it's just the person that people like to come and talk to, or oh, I'm just, no. There's some wound that, in most cases we're working through ourselves,
Mhm.
whether consciously or subconsciously. So I think really being able to do, the more work we do, the more present we can be with our clients.
I agree. I agree completely. And the more you enjoy your job, going to
Yeah.
uh, trying to not get into phases of burnout, right?
Mm-hmm.
Burnout is super prevalent for helpers of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
But doing your own work certainly helps with that. I've always said the antidote to burnout is balance. So if you're
Mm-hmm.
pouring out, pouring out, pouring out, and you're not receiving and allowing your cup to be filled again, you're going to get burned out. That is an
Mm-hmm.
absolute recipe for disaster. People burn out, they leave the field. Instead, I would encourage people to do the work along the way so that you can have a long career in this. Speaking of long careers, I'd like to talk for a minute, a slight pivot here. There are a lot of different things that you can do in this field without having your butt in the seat full time. So let's talk a little bit about that, because long careers in this field have different phases and different stages for most people. So
Mm-hmm.
I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's when you're talking about burnout and balance, I think that's pivotal, right? Having something. I know me, I get bored and my brain is looking for something to kind of get into that's exciting and new and fresh and fun. That's just how I am. That's how I operate. I love it. And doing the same thing over and over again, repetitively, like same client, same it. it can cause, burnout. So I think being willing to pivot and see, like a lot of times if I see, I kind of try to look at things from the perspective of if I'm hearing the same thing over and over again or seeing the same thing over and over again, my idea is how can I work smarter and not harder, right? So if this is a system, this is an issue, then how do I address, I use my hands and y'all can't see my hands, but how do I
The
address
YouTubers will see your hands.
how do I address what's above that issue, that system that's creating that issue, right? So being open to like be creative and find ways to how do I address this issue. That's how I came up with Groundbreakers. It was because when I went through my EMDR training, it was me and 2 other clinicians of color, and we all knew each other, and we stuck together through certification. And then us sticking together and having that community, I was like, wow, this worked for us, right? How many other people don't have this? So how can I create something so other people have what I have that worked for me?
Yeah. And that's the therapreneur, like the therapist entrepreneur mindset. But I want to address for those of you listening who are not entrepreneurial, because not everyone is, and that is okay. I want to give you some things that I've done in the past that have been really helpful when I know I'm starting to experience burnout. I will change my Psychology Today profile to change the types of clients that I am seeking, right? And I keep a Word document of all I know I'm organized. I keep a Word document of every different Psychology Today, all my Psychology Today profile options in one Word document, so that if I want to take a break from couples because they can be exhausting, then I will take that off of my profile and I will highlight something else. So I'll kind of switch it around so that I'm not always drawing the exact same thing. I like the variety. It helps the day go by a little bit faster. Some people are super niche down and they see the same thing all day, every day. And if that's you and you love it, cool beans for you. That ain't me. So I try and switch it up, but I life hack myself with not having to do more work by having multiple profiles. Every time I write a new one, it's saved in there. That way, when I want to switch stuff up, I just copy, paste, boom, we're done.
Yeah, I love that. I love that idea of kind of being able to manage the flow of clients that you get, coming in. I kind of do that a little bit with training. So if I feel like I'm getting burnt out in an area and I need to fire some different neurons in my brain, then I'll go get trained in something else. Right. And then I could still work with, if I want to still work with the people I'm working with, but I'm coming with something fresh and new, a new technique and seeing how that operates. So that's another way to kind of keep things fresh and, prevent burnout by learning something new.
Absolutely. Following your curiosity for me has been one of the most fun things I've done in this career, because I did not limit myself to it has to look a certain way. So when I really enjoyed certain types of therapy, I did that. And when I became curious about other things, or I wanted to do clinical supervision, or I wanted to do the retreats, whatever it was, I allowed myself the freedom to flow around. And it's created a lot of enjoyment in this job. It's created a diversity of people I would have never met otherwise. And I would just encourage the people that are listening, follow your curiosity. It doesn't have to all go a certain way that you had in your head it was supposed to go. Let life take you a little bit where you want, where it goes. Put some structure around it. That's my opinion, of course, misstructure, but put a little bit of structure around it, but enjoy it. This career is fascinating. It's phenomenal. I love human beings and I think they're super interesting. So there's always something new we can learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I'm kind of going back because, my brain is, I'm thinking. And sometimes, some situations cause us to literally be in a box, right? So for instance, I'm at an agency or I'm not an entrepreneur and I'm working where I have to follow these guidelines because that's where I'm at, right? or I'm in this system, right? And I have to follow the system because this is how the country works. This is how it works, right? And I still want to be authentic and true to who I am, you know, even within those parameters, being able to move freely. Like you can still be free in the box too, you know, until you can get fully out of the box or whatever. But just finding ways, even within the environment that you're in, whether workplace environment, location, wherever you find yourself, like asking yourself, how can I show up as myself just a little bit more in this environment?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How can I use what's here? I feel like everything we need is available to us, like within us or in our proximity or whatever the case may be. I went to a training and I'm losing the guy's name now. I don't remember his name, but he talked about the power of like storytelling. And he talked about how sometimes we can get so caught up on like the environment and stuff that we're in, and get so conditioned to feel like things have to be a certain way to have a successful session. And he talked about when he was remodeling his home, and there was like stuff out of place. It was like dust everywhere. They had like 2 chairs, but it was like the most powerful sessions that he had. He remembers all of those sessions because of the environment was different.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I had a client and I was rushing. I locked myself out of my office. I was like, I don't know what. And there was an empty office next door. And I was like, if you want to reschedule, we can reschedule. But I'm locked out. We can sit on the floor in here and have a session. And she was like, cool. And we sat on the floor in an empty office and had the most powerful, meaningful session that we probably had since we had been working together. Right. So knowing that you are enough, like your presence alone has power, and not being so caught up on all of the things that you're told that you have to be a successful therapist, knowing that like you alone, you know, are enough and you can help your clients heal and change just because you're in a room.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so beautiful. And most of us who are in this field are intuitive by nature, or through life circumstances, depending on, you know, what your belief is in that. And our presence, if we can get out of what we think is supposed to happen in a session, and we tune in to our just being present with the client,
like what's really happening.
Yeah, that's where the magic happens, right? You get this weird thought, like, I should ask about this. And you think, where in the world did that come from? And then you're like, okay, I've learned to trust myself. I'll ask the question. And the person says, how did you know? You know, and that wouldn't have come if you were so busy going by a prescribed way that you thought the session was supposed to go. So whether it's in being entrepreneurial or just being in the room with the client, it's okay to break out of the box. Be authentically who you are, show up and be fully present and enjoy this amazing career.
Yeah.
Yunetta, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being here. Tell people how they can connect with you.
Yes, so you can find me on my social media platforms. So Springforth Counseling is my practice page, and Groundbreakers is my new page that I'm building for the BIPOC EMDR directory. So you can follow that. I got a TikTok, Yunetta Spring. I think I created my TikTok around the same time when we.
I did. You are so creative on TikTok. You've taught me a lot.
It was like I was like 1 or 2 videos in but you know, I play around on there when I feel like it. Or you can so my websites are Springforth Counseling for my practice, and then Groundbreakers Therapy for if you're looking for information on EMDR services.
Awesome. And I will link all of that below for you. And I just want to thank you again for coming. If you would like to connect more with the podcast or with me, counselingcommunity.com, or Facebook, Counseling Community, Instagram, Counseling Community. We're here for you. We want to see you grow. We want to see you thrive. We want to see you be in this career and love it. So whatever we can do to help support you in doing that, let's do it. Get out there and live your best dang life. Have a good day.
Love it. Love it.
Bye.